And Linux, Splunk is kind of not exactly the paid Hadoop, but kind of. They operate in the same big data space. Splunk has, they basically invented the same thing at the same time. And they went different routes. One went the traditional company route, one went open source. They work together now, they're mature enough. Splunk has a product called Hunk. So remember he was showing you Hive and all those different front ends for you to send jobs, so you don't actually have to write your MapReduce at the shell anymore. Splunk's the same thing. If you know Splunk and their search language, then you can put Splunk on top of Hadoop with the Hunk app, and then you can write Splunk search syntax and pull your data out of Hunk. So you can kind of go both ways now with both these products because they're so similar. So you guys already have a really good baseline understanding of big data space and MapReduce. Splunk has the same basic architectural design that Hadoop does for the same reasons. There are some differences.
I have to ask, you guys have hunks that haul junk?
We'll see me later. So we're just going to walk through this sandbox. When you get done, it says your sandbox is ready, and you click here. And what this does is this goes into Splunk Cloud and spins up. That is slow. Okay, and here it gives you a password here. That's a crazy password. But anyway, we're going to log in just like it says. Ooh. I didn't think so. Now I might have a problem. Okay.
It says you have to change the password after you log in.
Yeah, I did this a while ago. I'll just type it. Okay. The Splunk default password, the Splunk default password, if you install it yourself, is change me, but I see it's not letting me actually use that. So I'll just make it. Okay. So what's nice about this tutorial is it actually has all these interactive widgets along the way. So we're actually going to if you have a sample data file, it used to be that Splunk would say download it onto your computer, and it would create a little small Splunk cluster for you on your whatever computer you downloaded it to. But now it's all in the cloud. It's even easier. So we're not going to explore a data file. We're going to actually take this tour. And the nice thing about the tour is, how many of you are familiar with Apache weblogs? Like the 404, 200, okay. Wow, very few people. Okay, well, I kind of expected many hands to go up. But one of the big places people have been getting actionable and monetizable business intelligence data is from these weblogs, to see where you're going and what you put in your shopping cart and all that kind of stuff. This first tour we're going to walk through is going to show that. So this is the way Splunk works. Is it's just like they said, read schema on read, right? But you still have to apply some kind of schema. So some of these products are so ubiquitous that either Splunk themselves or the user community has already created that schema for you, and that's the case with these Apache weblogs. There's already a schema, so you can, and it's built into Splunk, so it knows when it looks at those types of logs what they are. So that comes out of the box. So you can see here, what Splunk is showing you here is this is a graphical representation of all the events in my sandbox for all time. Now, inside my sandbox, there's a fake web activity going on. So this will constantly be changing inside here, and it'll go up and down and do all kinds of different stuff. There'll be some errors and some good stuff and some bad stuff. So this is not just a picture. This is actually a like a widgetized overlay on top of the actual search. If you have Splunk at your company or at home or whatever, it looks exactly like this. What you have is this search bar here where you give it the search command. So everything you do with Splunk exploratory, all your drill down stuff will look just like this. You'll be on the search bar. Now the search that's in your search bar may have come from a dashboard where you clicked into it, right? And say, show me about that. And what it'll do is it'll take you here and it'll put the search that built the display you clicked on, and it'll set the time frame here for, like if it was a time series thing and you clicked on this bar, it'll set the time frame for that time frame. And what it'll do is it'll show all the raw events that were used to generate that portion of the display you clicked on. So in this case, it's telling me that, type the following search. So when you run, so we're not going to look at all the time. Let's just look at, for example, today. So anytime you change this time picker, this is called the time picker, it will automatically rerun as though you had clicked this search thing. And you can do other stuff like 404, right? You don't have to have, Splunk automatically tokenizes the data that it indexed when it cooks it. So if you have normal delineation of your text, like spaces or punctuation or asterisks or slashes or whatever, you don't have to have wildcards in that because it knows that that's sort of a word, right? So I could just type 404 and it'll show me in here, it'll highlight the 404 that it found. But if I was going to do something like 40 something, right? I don't know what, the whole 400 series. I could do that, but see now it's matching a port number over here, as well as this error code here. But it takes wildcarding here at the command line. So this is very much, many people say Splunk is Google for logs. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like a search engine for your log data. So that's your intro to the basic search phase.
So when you want to read your log data, so are you pointing it to a source or a directory where the logs are stored?
Okay, all right, let's talk about that. So the way it works is you install a Splunk forwarder, which is a very small client.
Folder?
Forwarder.
Forwarder.
Forwarder client.
Okay.
So you download Splunk forwarder for whatever platform you have, and then you install it and you tell it where to phone home for the command and control, which is in deploymentclient.conf. You say go here, and then he'll tell you what kind of forwarder you are and what kind of apps to download and what files to start sending and where to send them. You can hand manage that. The outputs.conf tells it what indexers to send it to. The inputs.conf tells it what you're monitoring, whether it's you're calling a script every 10 seconds or whether you're just watching a file that somebody's writing to. A lot of times, first people's exposure to Splunk is to go to your syslog ng and just say forward all that stuff into Splunk so I can actually do something with it. Splunk used to actually support I can't think of the name of it now, where like with a lot of times when they peaked at the syslog ng, they'd have a file that was just a tail, and you could tail it, but it never got any bigger. Name's escaping me at this point.
Can I ask a question about Splunk? Is it just for the use within an enterprise, or can you go to Google Analytics and places like that with it?
Well, so you have to get the data into a Splunk cluster. So what I did by doing this cloud is I spun up a Splunk cluster in the cloud. And also they have this fake data generator. So there's a Splunk forwarder and this data generator. But what you would do is you'd either have to have a transport mechanism on your data. Like some of our enterprise systems, they say, you don't get to put a Splunk forwarder on our box.
Yeah.
You have to use our export mechanism, or FTP, or you can come in and pull stuff off. But so what I did at my company is in our master purchase agreement, I had the lawyers insert a clause that says you will put a Splunk forwarder on everything you sell us.
Okay.
Right? That's what I suggest you do. Even if you're not going to buy Splunk, put it in there. And then they'll certify that it's okay. Splunk is like 0.00 whatever. The impact is very small, CPU-wise. It could be kind of substantial port-wise, depending on how much stuff you're getting off there. But generally, even boxes that are generating a huge amount of data, the CPU impact and the memory impact is negligible, as long as your transport can keep up with what you're buffering out.
Where are we transporting it to?
So just like Hadoop has a cluster of servers, you have to set up indexers. So Splunk indexers, they're single duty servers. You can do it any way you like, right? Typically, they do just like they do with Hadoop. You get your commodity, lowest cost hardware. A lot of companies, as they're going VMs, they've got all these bare servers that they're not using anymore. Use those. They don't have to be the same machines, but that helps. It makes it easier.
Writing to some logical file system, not purely.
Well, so Splunk has its own proprietary file system they use, or not file system, but their way of indexing the data. So there's a little bit of cooking that goes on at the forwarder, just to compress it a little bit, and then it gets sent up the indexer, and then the indexer saves it in their own TS-IDX files. Yes.
I think you may have just answered my question.
Oh, good.
Last telecom I worked for, we generated tens, hundreds of gigabytes of log files. I mean, it was incredible how much.
Right.
Thousands of servers. Trying to transfer all of that over our gigabit nets in the data centers would be saturate a lot of the throughput. So you do compression.
Yeah, you can
Or
do
you
even
have-
your own compression. You can set up what they call a heavy forwarder, and then you can do your own trimming and modifying it and manipulation. But obviously, then your CPU cost goes up. The typical standard light forwarder does just a really small amount of basic, gzip kind of compression, and then ships it out. So.
Now, typically we zipped our files.
Right.
And stuck them into a directory and then aged them out every now and then.
Yeah, it's very common. I come from a telecom background. We have the same thing. Splunk can handle those gzip files native. It'll just ship those out
Ship
as
them out
is.
and then uncompress them and index them.
Yes,
Okay.
on the other side. Exactly.
Good.
So this is just showing again, like you have your user agent, right, string in these logs. It tells you what device and operating system you're running on. So in this case, he says type in iPhone, and then you can see in this log data a much smaller set of data now. This is set for 4 hours. And you can see visually by looking at this, this graphical representation of your data, how frequent it is. And if you'd say, well, like there's a spike here, I'd like to look at that, you can just drag on that, and it automatically zooms in here. And if you zoom in here, it'll actually blow up this scale as well, and you can see, this is made up of these two spikes for whatever reason. And I can actually drill on those 82 events, and down here again, I see my 82 events are right here, from most recent to least recent, with still these iPhones highlighted in here. And here you have all of this extra data that came along with your field extractions, right? Because it knows what kind of data this is. It's standard log data. And I can come in here and say, well, are there any IP addresses on this filter? Any field names called IP addresses if I don't know my fields? And I say, oh, there's a client IP and a status description. And I can highlight these. And what that'll do is it will show underneath my event data, it will augment that. And every search I do now, I will see the client IP pulled out of here and highlighted here, down here in the context of the events as they're presented to me.
Can you read a text from that iPhone?
Can I do what about the
Well,
text?
you just said that was for an iPhone.
Right.
Within the enterprise. Can you read a text message from that iPhone?
Well, no, this is just log data. So the iPhone went to my website, and in the Safari on iPhone too, right? In the browser, and I have a log of that. When the browser itself tells me I am this kind of browser. I'm a browser built up for iPhone on this version of the OS, and that's the log we're looking at. So there's server logs when he searched. Now, in the telecom space, I do have, at my company, we do Splunk the SMSs, and we do actually have, we can get the logs with the message text in them.
Okay.
But what we did is, for legal reasons, we sent one version of the text message logs to the data warehouse, and it has the message text.
Okay.
And then we nilled that field out when we send it into Splunk. So the only thing we have in Splunk is the message length, how many bytes were in it.
Okay.
So we know that on a user. But then we have a much lower burden of governance on the data and much more freedom on what we can do with the data because we took the message text out when we sent it into Splunk. Yes?
Another question about compression. Do you support compressed data sets on the file system?
Well,
Disk is cheap now, right?
Right.
Everywhere except at a telecom. The burdening is such that disk is expensive.
Splunk, it's all proprietary. The way the indexers work is the way the indexers work. And so what they say is so they compress it and they distribute it and they make multiple copies just like Hadoop does.
Mm-hmm.
But your indexer compression is about 50%. So you take whatever your volume is and per day and multiply that times your retention because you tell Splunk for each, like this says index equals demo. That index is a logical representation that's backed up by a physical bucket. And you tell it the bucket, what size the bucket is, and it's FIFO. So as new data comes in, as it expires, it just drops off to make room for the new stuff. So you don't really have, you figure out what your space is, and what you see, and what you should do if you have Splunk is a retention report, because as your data volume grows, your retention shrinks. And if you don't pay attention, you used to be storing in Splunk your hot data that you action out of. You thought you had a year, and you've only got 90 days now because you've gone up 5 times in your volume.
So you say on average about 150% of your data volume is your total disk space?
No, 50%. 50%. So what your volume is, how much space you need on your indexers is half that because of the compression.
But does the indexers include the data or just the indexes?
The indexers have the indexes,
Right.
indices, and within those are the raw data volumes, a standard file system. You would say, go your data, put this in this index's data here, and furthermore, only allowed to use this much space in that file system, and then Splunk does the rest, right? And you can easily grow that. You can just go into the indexer and change that value as long as you're not going to exceed the space on your file system where you told it to
You're
write.
not physically tied to the data itself. You don't know if you delete the data, you haven't deleted the index portion.
Splunk does all that. Splunk ages the data out automatically. You can delete, for example, I can go in here and I can pipe it to the delete command, and for that, 4 hours for that stuff, I have insufficient privileges to delete. I never tried that before. But it's my sandbox. I should have all the privileges that I desire. But when you do that, what it does is it just marks the data as unsearchable. It never deletes it until it ages out.
I see.
So what happens is Splunk will immediately fill up the space you give it, and it will stay that full forever. Right? That's how it works. So you don't have where the indexers ran out of space and they crashed. That doesn't happen because you fence it in when you set it up, and you have to monitor that. Right? You continuously will be degrading your retention, and that's a big problem for companies because they don't think about that. They set it up and they think they're good to go, and a year down the road they're 10 times the volume, and they don't have the data they need, even though they set it up that way. Right? So that's what Splunk is counting on, because Splunk sells their product by license, right? How much by ingestion rate, and so you buy, a terabyte a day or whatever you buy, and you're good to go. But they know next year you're going to need twice as much. You're going to come back and buy more. Okay. And you guys interrupt me anytime you like. I mean, this is the boot camp for you. We are going to make it through this presentation within an hour. What we're doing here. But if you have a question about what I'm saying or in general, something you heard about Splunk, just jump in.
And I know it's very different by company and all that, but what kind of data volumes do you typically see, from these sort of web
We,
logs?
at my telecom, we're not doing anywhere near what we should with Splunk or Hadoop, but we're doing in the tens of terabytes per day
Per day?
of volume into Splunk. Those are what our licenses are. Yeah.
So would you mind repeating the questions? When
Oh, you asked
somebody
me, how much
approached-
volume at a telecom. I was at Metro PCS, which is now T-Mobile. We're in the tens of terabytes. That's how daily volume going into Splunk. And we're doing that on about 30 indexers. Yeah, 30 indexers. But they set that up before I got there, so I'm not exactly sure. I know what the Metro PCS cluster is, but I don't know the particulars about the T-Mobile cluster, because it doesn't matter. They're working.
So just curious about it from a pricing standpoint, I was checking the pricing page.
Right.
So it seems like that can get
Never pay full retail.
pretty, okay, all right.
That's my advice to you. Cut a deal.
All right.
And get a free license to start out with. They'll give you, like you say, I need a terabyte license for a month, they'll give it to you. If, you got to play fair, right?
Sure.
You're seriously interested.
Yeah,
The pricing shouldn't scare you away, and the availability of the license to try out what you're doing shouldn't scare you away. They'll work with you. They're really good.
Two questions I have. The first question is how different your search engine from the traditional other search engines that are available in the market. A lot of search engines out in the market. What makes you different?
Splunk. So his question is, how is this search different? And it really isn't. They tried to make it as plain text as possible. For example, if I'd like to perform a statistical analysis on this data, like this says status is greater than or equal to 400. Let's say I'd like to break this out and say stats count by status. I just want to see statistical breakdown for this 4 hours. How many of each status code? I do stats count by status, and I hit return. It's as plain text as you can get it. And furthermore, and this will run and it'll show me the actual, actually it'll show me visualization. I'd like to see the actual statistical table. And I see that in the 4 hours there are 2,500s, 19 101s, this many 200s, and it actually go immediately from your statistical table to a visualization as well. So they make it just about as easy as possible to actually provide a presentable result directly from your search. If you like to say, what's the average of this? There's an average command. What's the sum of this? There's a sum command. What's the max of this? There's a max command. Floor command. All the stuff you would typically do in a spreadsheet formula or something like that maps directly to what you're doing here. And there's a Rosetta out there on the web. If you type Rosetta Splunk SQL, if you know your search query language, they'll tell you if you did it this way with Oracle, that command maps directly to this in Splunk. You do it this way. So if you think Oracle in your brain, like he said he worked for Oracle for 10 years, or 10 years ago, for whatever he said, if that's how your brain thinks, great, you're done. You can map directly from what you're trying to do, if it was a database, to the Splunk language. So it's very straightforward, and we'll see a bunch of different examples as we walk through the rest of the tutorial.
The second question is, the indexing overhead on the system. Overhead that is generating, I think there must be overhead for when you increase the number of indexers on the system, on the servers. Splunk indexers running in the background.
Right, so the indexers do double duty. So when you're concerned about capacity and performance of your indexers, you've got two problems. You have your data ingestion problem and your search response problem. Because when I do a search, I send this search as a MapReduce job out to each indexer, and I say, go do this and bring the results back to me. So typically what we see happening when we see the performance issues is people start saying, I'm drilling down through my data, because one of the nice things about Splunk is one of the things that I did was less, well, it was maybe 50-50. I did as much showing people how to do their stuff better with Splunk as I did doing it for them. And so I would say, okay, here's your search. I used to build dashboards. Everybody would say, I need to change this, change this, change this, change this. You could never launch, right? So now I just build searches, and I say, here you go, build your own dashboard, because it's so easy now. to take this into a dashboard, I basically do save as dashboard. And then I can edit the XML and change all the settings. It's really, really easy. But what we see happening is the search performance degrades as I'm doing my drill down. And people say, "Wow, you know, this, I did return and I have to wait like 2 minutes." And it used to be like that. Well, the more users you get in and the more stupid things they do, like searching wildcards for all time, in real time, like 5-hour window in real time, you could have one user completely destroy the performance for everybody just by doing something stupid. So one of the things you need to do is get good best practices in when you launch your Splunk cluster. Like, don't let people run real-time searches. Don't let them save searches and schedule them.
Can you limit those things?
Yeah, you can. It has a roles engine for the users, and you can tie it into LDAP, where the roles come in from LDAP, and you can just have everybody come in as a basic user and add these power user roles later.
And I see you can have lots of canned searches that you develop ahead of time and let the users just execute.
I'd rather let my people fish, just make sure they're not going to drill holes in the boat, which they will.
But we need frequent real-time searches also, right? Like we cannot.
Yes, Splunk's not really there real time. If you're really going to do real time, you're going to spend some big bucks on indexers, way more. If you can say, I can live with a 1-minute delay, I can search every minute looking for the last minute or every minute looking for the last hour, you're going to spend 10% of what you'd spend to do real time on your indexers. You really have to beef up your indexers if you're going to be doing real time. It's super, super, super CPU intensive. So I would never launch a Splunk cluster with real time enabled for users. Eventually somebody's going to do it and everybody's going to suffer.
So is it something, it's kind of enhancement that you guys are working?
Well, I don't work for Splunk. I like Splunk. I've been working with them a long time. They've been trying to get me to work for them, but I think I make more money working for me doing Splunk. But they're working on it. They're working on it. It's much better. It was unusable for several releases. Now it's at least usable if you'd like to throw the hardware at it, which is like I said, very expensive. So walking through the rest of this here. So it has, like, for example, you were asking about the command set. Oh, and I should have brought those. They have these great trifold green things. I should have brought those for y'all. I'll bring them to the next. If you guys go to the big data meeting or the Splunk user group meeting, I'll bring a big stack of them. I'm going to start coming to the big data meetups too.
It's a meetup?
Splunk there's a Splunk Dallas user group meetup and Google group. I don't know about the big data one.
Yeah, it is.
But most of you guys are from there, right? I'm not, but I'm going to start one there. So that's how I got invited here, because some of the guys came over to the Splunk one. And they said, well, come in and tell us about Splunk. So you see here it says time charts, just like stats, except when you do time chart, every line has a time along with it. So you say time chart count by status description, which is very similar to what I just told it. Now the status, they have a lookup table. So let's say in your data you have 200, 400, 404, all these codes, but you know, because you're smart, that a 200 is an okay. It actually says okay. It has a little smaller one, but you can give it anything you like and automatically say, for this field, take the number that's there, go into this lookup table, and create another field. And that's what they did. They had this status description here.
So is this a way to analyze the data, obviously much faster and better and than you were able to before, but can it also take actions based on what's happening?
So let's say, for example, I was going to say anytime iPhones we're going to search for the last 4 hours where this is status greater than 400, we're just going to do this. We're going to say, look for, these are all error codes, right? And I did this search for 4 hours, and I see that we got here, whoa, man. Oh, no, that can't be right. Yeah, that's right. 4,000 events. But okay, let's say, so that's about 4,000 events for 4 hours. So let's say anytime we have more than 4,000 events in 4 hours, we're going to raise an alert. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll save this as an alert. I'll give an alert that says, more than 400 web errors in 4 hours. Put your name in the description, because it'll go somewhere and somebody won't know what it means or what to do about it. We're going to schedule this. We're going to run it every hour, and we're going to run it right on. We'll run it on the 15th. Doesn't really matter, right? And anytime. Actually, I need to go back. Hang on a second. I need to make this. Stats count. Spelled it wrong. Still did it wrong. Stats count where. Actually, I can do that because it can say greater than 400. I don't have to do that. I can do that. Sorry. I wouldn't save an alert this way. I was going to do it the way I normally would, but anyway.